Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Haunted by Night. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. The Return. Alex's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the familiar, winding roads of New England unfurled before them. The dense, looming trees seemed to swallow the late afternoon light, casting long shadows across the asphalt. It had been years since Alex last visited this small town, and the circumstances of their return were far from comforting. The sudden death of their estranged father had left Alex with a mix of emotions, none of which were easily sorted. The mansion appeared as they rounded the final bend, a looming, Gothic structure surrounded by overgrown gardens and dense woods. Its once grand facade now wore the marks of time and neglect. The local kids had always whispered about the place, calling it haunted. Standing before it now, Alex couldn't help but shiver at the sight. Stepping out of the car, Alex was greeted by the chill of the evening air. They glanced at the mansion, its windows like dark eyes watching them. With a deep breath, Alex approached the front door, the old wood creaking under the weight of their hand as they pushed it open. Inside, the air was musty, and dust motes danced in the dim light filtering through the dirty windows. The interior was a time capsule, with furniture draped in white sheets and a grand chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling. Alex wandered through the halls, each step echoing in the silence. As they moved deeper into the house, unsettling sensations began to creep in. A sudden cold draft brushed past, causing Alex to pull their coat tighter. Lights flickered sporadically, and the faint sound of whispers seemed to follow them. They tried to dismiss these as old house quirks, but an unease settled in their stomach. In the attic, Alex stumbled upon an old trunk buried beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. Opening it, they found a diary bound in worn leather. The name on the cover stopped them cold. It belonged to their mother, who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. Alex's heart raced as they opened the diary. The pages filled with their mother's delicate handwriting. The entries revealed a side of their mother Alex had never known. She wrote of a malevolent presence in the house, something dark and sinister. As Alex read, the sense of unease grew stronger. The final entry was a chilling plea for help, cut off abruptly. Closing the diary, Alex looked around the attic, the shadows seeming to press closer. The house wasn't just a relic of the past, it held secrets, dangerous ones. And Alex knew that uncovering them would be the only way to find closure, both for their mother and themselves. With the diary clutched tightly in their hand, Alex descended the attic stairs, determined to unravel the mysteries that haunted their family and the house. Little did they know, the journey ahead would test their sanity and courage in ways they had never imagined. Chapter 2. The Awakening. With the diary clutched tightly in their hand, Alex descended the attic stairs, determination mingling with a growing sense of dread. They settled into the dusty, dimly lit study, a room that once belonged to their father. The thick silence was broken only by the ticking of an old grandfather clock. As Alex flipped open the diary, their mother's elegant, looping script seemed to pull them to the past. The early entries were benign, recounting daily life and household matters. But soon, the tone shifted. Her words began to speak of a presence in the house, an oppressive, malevolent force that seemed to stalk her every move. She described shadowy figures in the corners of her vision, whispers that floated through the halls at night, and objects that inexplicably moved on their own. The further Alex read, the more intense their mother's fear became. She wrote of sleepless nights, haunted by unseen eyes and cold, spectral hands that brushed against her skin. The final, incomplete entry was the most chilling. I can feel it closing in. It wants something, I must protect Alex. If you're reading this, my dear child, be careful. It knows you're here. A chill ran down Alex's spine. The air around them seemed to thicken, and a shadow passed over the study. They snapped the diary shut, breathing heavily. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. Alex knew they couldn't face this alone. Reaching for their phone, Alex dialed a number they hadn't called in years. Sarah, an old friend from school, answered on the third ring. "Alex, it's been ages. What's going on?" "I'm back in town," Alex replied, voice shaking slightly. "At the mansion. I found something unsettling. Can you come over?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in an hour." As darkness fell outside, the supernatural occurrences intensified. Alex saw shadowy figures flit past the windows, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Objects in the room began to shift. A book slid off the shelf, a picture frame tilted and fell. Alex felt the presence drawing nearer, the air thick with malevolence. When Sarah arrived, her expression shifted from friendly concern to serious determination. "Tell me everything," she said, eyes scanning the dimly lit room. Alex recounted the diary's contents, their mother's growing terror, and the recent events. Sarah listened intently, her face growing grimmer with each detail. "This place has a dark history," she said finally. "The land itself is tainted. There were rumors of a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances long before your family moved in. Together, they pored over old maps and historical records Sarah had brought. They discovered that the mansion was built on land with a notorious past. In the late 1800 ES, a series of gruesome deaths and unexplained disappearances plagued the area. The locals whispered about a curse, a darkness that consumed those who ventured too close. Alex and Sarah shared a tense glance. The haunting was no mere ghost story. It was rooted in a very real and dangerous history. The presence in the house had been awakened, and it was up to them to uncover the truth and put an end to the terror. As the night deepened, so did their resolve to face whatever malevolent force lurked within the mansion's walls. Chapter 3: The Haunting begins. The night stretched on, bringing with it an unsettling silence that settled heavily over the mansion. Alex and Sarah huddled over Sarah's research materials in the dimly lit study, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The more they uncovered, the darker the history of the mansion seemed to grow. Sarah laid out a series of old newspaper clippings and yellow documents. This mansion was once the meeting place for a cult in the late 1800s, she explained, her voice hushed. They practiced dark rituals, believed to summon a malevolent spirit. Alex felt a cold dread settle in their chest. "A spirit that never left," they murmured, glancing around the room. The air felt charged, as if the house itself was listening. As the hours passed, exhaustion claimed Alex, and they drifted into a fitful sleep. Vivid nightmares gripped them, dragging them into the past. They saw their mother, her face etched with terror, moving through the house with frantic urgency. Shadowy figures loomed in the background, whispering threats and promises of doom. In one dream, Alex was a child again, hiding under the bed as their mother argued with an unseen force. "You can't have them," she screamed. "I won't let you." The memory was so vivid that Alex could feel the scratchy carpet beneath their fingers and hear the tremble in their mother's voice. They woke with a start, heart pounding, the room around them warping and shifting as if it were alive. The shadows seemed to dance, mocking their fear. Alex rubbed their eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of the dream, but the haunting wasn't done with them. Suddenly, an invisible force shoved Alex against the wall, pinning them in place. Cold hands seemed to wrap around their throat, squeezing. Gasping for breath, Alex struggled, their vision blurring. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if 100 voices were speaking at once. "Alex," Sarah's voice broke through the chaos. She rushed to their side, her presence grounding them in reality. The force relented, and Alex collapsed to the floor, panting and trembling. "We need to leave," Sarah urged, fear evident in her eyes. "This place is too dangerous." But Alex shook their head, resolve hardening. "No," they said, their voice hoarse but firm. "I need to understand what happened to my mother. I can't leave now, not when we're so close to the truth." Sarah hesitated but then nodded, understanding the depth of Alex's need for answers. "All right," she said, determination replacing her fear. "But we need to be careful. This spirit is powerful and won't let us uncover its secrets easily." As they prepared to delve deeper into the mansion's dark history, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the malevolent presence was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. The mansion seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its dark past entwined with their present in a deadly dance. Despite the danger, Alex knew they couldn't turn back. The haunting had begun in earnest, and the only way out was through. They had to confront the spirit, uncover the truth, and lay the past to rest no matter the cost. Chapter 4: The Deeper Investigation. The morning light filtered weakly through the mansion's grimy windows as Alex and Sarah sat in the study, surrounded by stacks of research materials. The night's events had left them shaken but resolute. They needed more help. Sarah suggested an old acquaintance, Dr. Roberts, a renowned paranormal investigator with years of experience dealing with malevolent entities. Later that afternoon, Dr. Roberts arrived, a tall man with graying hair and a stern demeanor. He listened intently as Alex and Sarah recounted the history of the mansion and the recent supernatural events. "We'll need to gather evidence," he said, setting down a heavy case filled with high-tech equipment. "The more we understand about this spirit, the better we can fight it." They spent the rest of the day setting up cameras in the main rooms and hallways, positioning EVP recorders in places where the whispers were strongest, and installing motion sensors to detect any movement. As night fell, the mansion seemed to come alive with an eerie energy. The team gathered in the study, the glow of monitors casting ghostly light on their faces. Hours passed with little activity, but just as they began to grow restless, the monitors flickered. A shadowy figure darted across the screen in the hallway outside the study. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. Dr. Roberts rewound the footage, and there it was, a faint, translucent figure moving with unnatural speed. "That's no trick of the light," he said grimly. "We've got solid evidence of a supernatural presence." Moments later, the EVP recorder crackled to life, capturing a disembodied voice whispering Alex's name, followed by a chilling laugh. Alex's heart pounded as they listened, the reality of their situation sinking in deeper. Suddenly, the motion sensors in the basement triggered. The team hurried downstairs, armed with flashlights and cameras. The basement was cold and damp, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. As they explored, they stumbled upon a hidden door, partially concealed behind a stack of old crates. With a creak, the door opened to reveal a small, windowless room. The walls were covered in disturbing symbols, drawn in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was a stone altar, remnants of dark rituals scattered around it, bones, melted candles, and tattered cloth. Carved into the wall above the altar was a single, chilling message: "Vengeance will be mine." Alex shuddered, feeling the weight of the spirit's malevolence pressing down on them. Dr. Roberts examined the symbols, his face pale. "This spirit isn't just haunting the place, it's seeking revenge. Whatever the cult did here, It bound the spirit to this land with a deep, burning hatred. Alex swallowed hard, the gravity of their situation hitting them like a tidal wave. "We have to stop this," they said, voice trembling but determined. "For my mother and for everyone else, this spirit has harmed." The team knew the stakes had been raised. They were no longer dealing with mere hauntings, but with an entity driven by a relentless desire for vengeance. As they made their way back upstairs, the mansion seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, the walls whispering secrets of the dark deeds that had taken place within them. The deeper investigation had revealed the true extent of the danger they faced. Armed with this knowledge, Alex, Sarah, and Dr. Roberts prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that they had to act quickly before the spirit's wrath consumed them all. Chapter 5. The Unraveling. The days following their discovery in the basement were a blur of escalating terror. The mansion seemed to warp and pulse with dark energy, and Alex felt the presence of the spirit growing more oppressive. It was no longer content to lurk in the shadows. It was actively targeting them. Alex's nights were plagued with horrific visions. They saw their mother's face twisted in pain, trapped in an unending nightmare, reaching out with pleading eyes. During the day, the spirit's malevolence manifested in other ways. Cold fingers seemed to brush against Alex's skin, whispers filled their ears with accusations, and objects moved with menacing purpose. One evening, Alex stumbled upon a mirror in the hallway, only to see their reflection morph into a nightmarish version of themselves. The mirror image sneered, eyes glowing with a malevolent fire. Alex's own screams echoed through the empty halls, and they felt as if they were losing their grip on reality. Desperate, Alex retreated to the study, hoping to find some solace among the scattered research. Their hands trembled as they rifled through the documents. Then, buried beneath a stack of old papers, they discovered a hidden envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakably their mother's. Tearing it open, Alex read with growing horror and relief. The letter detailed their mother's desperate struggle against the malevolent force. She had discovered that the spirit could be banished, but it required a ritual involving elements from the original dark rites. The letter included instructions for the ritual, along with a warning that the spirit would become increasingly violent as the time to act approached. Alex's heart pounded as they read. The letter described how their mother had tried to gather the necessary items for the ritual, but had been thwarted at every turn. The final passage was a plea for forgiveness and a promise of protection for Alex. The weight of guilt and fear that had been mounting suddenly seemed to crystallize into a clearer path forward. They gathered Sarah and Dr. Roberts to share the letter's contents. "We have a chance," Alex said, their voice steadier than they felt. "But we have to act fast. The spirit is going to come after us with everything it has." Dr. Roberts nodded, a grim determination in his eyes. "We need to collect the items for the ritual and prepare ourselves. This won't be easy, but if we can follow these instructions precisely, we might stand a chance." As they made their preparations, the mansion seemed to tighten its grip on them. The air was thick with an almost palpable sense of menace. Alex could feel the spirit's rage building, an almost tangible force pressing against their sanity. The team's resolve hardened. They knew that the final confrontation would test their strength and courage to the limits. Armed with the clues from the letter and the knowledge they had gathered, they prepared to face the spirit in its own domain, hoping that their combined efforts would be enough to banish the malevolent force once and for all. Chapter 6. The Confrontation. The basement room was transformed into a makeshift battleground. The symbols from the old cult rituals were drawn with painstaking precision on the floor, their dark lines glowing faintly in the dim light of the candles that surrounded them. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Alex, Sarah, and Dr. Roberts prepared for the final confrontation with the malevolent spirit. Alex glanced around, the letter clutched tightly in their hand. "We're ready," they said, trying to sound confident, despite the pounding of their heart. "Let's lure it in." Dr. Roberts set up the final piece of equipment, a specialized recorder that would capture the spirit's essence. Sarah positioned herself near the center of the ritual symbols, her face pale but determined. They had worked through every detail, but nothing could fully prepare them for what was about to come. With a deep breath, Alex began to recite the incantation from their mother's letter. The air grew colder, and a heavy, oppressive force settled over them. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and stretch, gathering into a swirling mass of darkness. The spirit was coming. The temperature dropped sharply, and the flickering candle flames turned blue. A howl of rage filled the basement as the spirit materialized, a grotesque, shadowy figure with eyes like burning coals. It was the embodiment of their deepest fears, a nightmarish amalgamation of wrath and despair. The spirit lunged at them, and chaos erupted. Dr. Roberts was the first to be attacked, thrown violently against the wall. He collapsed, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, but he managed to scramble back to his feet, determination etched in his pain-stricken face. Sarah, caught in the spirit's grip, fell to the ground, her body convulsing. Her eyes rolled back, and her voice, now alien and guttural, spoke in a language that sent chills down Alex's spine. "I am the soul of those wronged, betrayed by the living," the spirit growled through her. "I seek vengeance." Alex's breath came in ragged gasps as they continued the incantation, their hands trembling. The spirit's howls grew louder, a cacophony of rage and agony. Shadows clawed at the walls, and the mansion itself seemed to groan and quake as if in protest. Sarah's body twisted and writhed as the spirit fought to maintain its hold, but with a final, desperate effort, Alex completed the incantation. The symbols on the floor began to glow fiercely, and the air crackled with energy. The mansion shook violently, and a blinding light erupted from the symbols, engulfing the spirit. The spirit's screams reached a deafening crescendo as it was pulled towards the center of the glowing symbols. Its form began to disintegrate, the malevolent force dissolving into a vortex of shadows and echoes. The walls trembled, and the air seemed to split with the spirit's final, anguished cry. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, it was over. The light faded, the shaking stopped, and the basement fell eerily silent. Alex, Sarah, and Dr. Roberts were left in the aftermath of the battle, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. Dr. Roberts, although injured, managed a weak smile. "It's over," he said, his voice hoarse but triumphant. "The spirit is banished." Sarah, still shaken but free from the spirit's control, nodded. Alex looked around the now quiet basement. The oppressive weight of the haunting lifted. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. As they made their way out of the basement, Alex felt a sense of cautious hope. The mansion, once a prison of fear, now seemed to hold a glimmer of peace. They had finally put the past to rest, and in doing so, found a measure of closure for themselves and their mother. Chapter 7. The days following the confrontation were marked by a deceptive calm. The mansion, once a realm of terror, now seemed almost peaceful. The oppressive weight of the spirit's presence had lifted, and the rooms were filled with an unsettling quiet. Alex, Sarah, and Dr. Roberts began to believe that their ordeal was finally over. For the first time in weeks, Alex felt a flicker of relief. They roamed the mansion, taking in the serene atmosphere with a cautious optimism. The old house, while still weathered and worn, seemed to exhale a sigh of relief. The shadows that had once seemed alive were now still and unmoving. But as night fell, a gnawing sense of unease began to creep back into Alex's mind. Nightmares returned, more vivid and haunting than before. They saw glimpses of the spirit, not defeated, but merely waiting, its eyes burning with renewed rage. The boundary between reality and nightmare began to blur once more. During the day, Sarah's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would snap suddenly, her gaze distant and unfocused. She seemed withdrawn, her responses curt and uncharacteristically cold. Alex and Dr. Roberts noticed the change, but were unsure how to address it. One evening, as they sat in the study, discussing their plans to assess the mansion's condition, Sarah's demeanor took a dark turn. "It's not over," she said abruptly, her voice hollow and devoid of warmth. "The spirit isn't gone. It's only been weakened." Alex and Dr. Roberts exchanged worried glances. "What are you talking about?" Alex asked, their voice trembling with a mix of hope and dread. "The spirit was never fully banished," Sarah continued, her eyes taking on a glazed, unsettling look. "It's regaining strength. It's waiting for the right moment to return stronger than before." Dr. Roberts, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "If Sarah's right, then we need to find the source of the spirit's power. If we only weakened it, it will come back with a vengeance." The realization hit Alex like a cold wave. They recalled the strange symbols and dark rituals from the basement. "There must be something we missed," Alex said, determination hardening their voice. "An artifact or something that's sustaining it." The team reconvened, their sense of urgency renewed. They scoured the mansion for any signs of a hidden artifact or other remnants of the cult's dark practices. The clues from the previous investigation seemed to point to a specific location in the mansion, a hidden chamber that had escaped their notice. As they prepared to search the mansion once more, the weight of their new mission settled over them. The mansion, still and silent, seemed to watch them with an eerie, knowing gaze. Alex felt the spirit's looming presence more acutely than ever, a reminder that their fight was far from over. They had to find and destroy the source of the spirit's power before it returned, stronger and more vengeful than before. Chapter 8: The Final Battle. The mansion felt oppressive, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation. Alex, Sarah, and Dr. Roberts moved with grim determination, guided by the final diary entries of Alex's mother. The pages had revealed cryptic hints about the location of a hidden artifact, an object of immense power that had been central to the spirit's dark influence. As they searched, the mansion seemed to shift, almost as if it were conspiring against them. The walls groaned, and the floorboards creaked ominously. Shadows lengthened and twisted, their shapes growing more sinister. Despite their efforts, the artifact remained elusive. Hours passed with mounting desperation. The atmosphere grew heavier, and an eerie chill settled over them. Sarah and Alex worked tirelessly, tearing through hidden compartments and secret rooms, their frustration mounting with each failed attempt. Dr. Roberts kept watch, his face lined with exhaustion, but his resolve unshaken. Then, as the clock ticked ominously towards midnight, Alex discovered a hidden compartment behind an old bookshelf in the library. Inside lay the artifact, a dark, ornate box, adorned with symbols of an ancient and sinister design. They had found it, but their relief was short-lived. A deafening roar shook the mansion as the spirit manifested in its full, terrifying form. The walls trembled, and the air crackled with malevolent energy. The spirit, now a swirling vortex of rage and darkness, bore down on them with a force that seemed almost physical. Dr. Roberts sprang into action, pushing Alex and Sarah back. "Get the artifact out of here," he shouted. "I'll hold it off." The spirit lunged at Dr. Roberts with a scream of fury. The old investigator fought valiantly, using all his strength to buy time. He was thrown violently against the walls, but his sacrifice bought Alex and Sarah the moments they needed. With shaking hands, Alex and Sarah prepared to destroy the artifact. They had to follow the ritual, described in the diary, to the letter. As they began the incantation, the mansion seemed to come alive with a violent energy, the floor quaking and the walls groaning as if in agony. The artifact, when subjected to the final ritualistic act, shattered into 1,000 pieces, and a blinding light erupted from the remnants. The spirit let out a final, anguished scream as it was pulled back into the void from which it had emerged. The mansion shook violently, its structure groaning as if it were being torn apart. As the light faded and the dust settled, the mansion began to collapse inward. Alex and Sarah stumbled out, barely escaping the crumbling ruins. They watched in stunned silence as the dark history of the mansion was buried beneath the rubble. In the aftermath, Alex stood among the wreckage, feeling the weight of their loss and the relief of their victory. The haunting was over, but the scars remained both physical and emotional. Alex knew that their mother's legacy had been honored, but the journey had irrevocably changed them. Epilogue. Years later, Alex looked back on the events with a mixture of sorrow and pride. They had dedicated their life to helping others confront supernatural threats, honoring their mother's memory and the sacrifices made. Each case was a reminder of their harrowing past, but also a testament to their commitment to protecting others from the darkness they had once faced. The mansion was gone, but its legacy lived on through Alex's unyielding resolve to confront the supernatural and help those in need.